Hello all and welcome, and I am the Mgtow philosopher. And in this video, I would like to talk about an article that was written recently titled, Men Are Taking Classes to Unlearn Toxic Masculinity. Now, this has been reposted in Breitbart's website because the original article, which was posted, was too poorly written, too little contextual information, and too little specifics for me to actually comment on. Now that Breitbart has reposted it, they've put in a lot more information and details that allow me to comment on it. So essentially, the gist of the article is the usual feminist tripe that some of you may or may not know, that men are responsible for all the evils of the world. Masculinity has caused all the wars, it causes all the rapes, it causes the majority of violent crimes. So masculinity is the problem, not men, just masculinity. So what we have to do is take men and feminize them, and then they won't be so dangerous to society at large. Of course, this theory has many holes. For one thing, it negates the whole influence that women have on men. It also negates the whole influence and criminal activities that women undertake and women's influence in the criminal underworld and in criminal activity. It really doesn't take that into account. Oh, but men are much more prevalent, criminally speaking, only in certain crimes. And by and large, okay, you could say that men are committing more of the crimes, but why is that? Why is that? Well, you just can't assume that it's because of masculinity, okay? You just can't make these blanket assumptions and say, well, masculinity is an evil thing, because every coin has two sides. And while you can make that argument if you haven't done any research or studying to look for cause and effect, you also cannot ignore the fact that masculinity has been responsible for just about every single major breakthrough that mankind enjoys the fruits of now. Men have built everything. That so-called evil masculinity gives men ambition, it gives men motivation, it gives them drive to accomplish, to achieve, to affect the world in a more positive way. We use that masculinity to drive us forward and to create, to innovate. And just look at what we have now. And literally, who are the people who build, who lay the bricks, who lay the foundation stones of our societies in all the world? It's men. So that supposed evil, toxic masculinity, well, that's kind of a price you pay. Everything has a double side to it. Just like femininity has its own negative, destructive aspects, which quite frankly, it seems these days to be the case that you only have the negative aspects, of course, because women have been free to explore all of their wants and desires without consequence, which is something you really can't do. But anyway, this article basically is all about man bashing and making you feel ashamed to be a man, and you need to unlearn your masculinity because masculinity is toxic, even though it built the freaking world. And if you didn't have masculinity, the world wouldn't exist. Masculinity is what protected you dumb women out there so that you could survive to this day and age and enjoy the fruits of our labor and sit in your little lazy boy chair, your little comforter at home, watching your beautiful TV in your environmentally controlled house where you can push a button and you can get it up to 90 degrees or down to 50 degrees, and you can live in your plush little existence in your little bubbles and not have any of the major threats that women 100, 150, 200 years ago, 1,000 years ago, 1,000,000 years ago had to face, and the only thing you had to protect you was that so-called toxic masculinity. The problem isn't masculinity. The problem is people having choice. It's individuals that are the problem. Oh, but of course, when you have identity politics, you have to make everything about groups, and that's how you control people, by grouping them together and then pitting them against each other, and you create this division in society, which is now destroying the Western world, which of course is the goal of the global elites. So let's see what this crappy story has to say, shall we? Troubled men across the country are turning to classes that help them unlearn their toxic masculinity. Oh, right! Because masculinity isn't an inborn trait. No, it's a social construct, according to the New York magazine. New York, equals liberal morons. A New York magazine published on Monday details the story of the story of a troubled guy named Stephen Hicks, who wrote his story, and the magazine published it, and his story was he turned to a rethink masculinity class to rid himself of his less than desirable behavior patterns. Well, what behavior patterns might those be? His want to rape? the rape instinct in men? That rape culture, that it doesn't exist to begin with? My relationship ended. Then a lot of things started collapsing in front of me. I wasn't doing really terrible things, but I also wasn't being the most ideal Stephen I could be. What does that mean? Ideal to who? What are you talking about? Ideal to you or ideal to women? You got women, you got people telling you, you need to be different, you need to be better. For who? The bar is really lowered for cisgender guys. Oh my God. He's one of those. He drank the Kool-Aid. He swallowed the gender study course nonsense in college. Hicks enrolled in a rethink masculinity class. You enrolled? Who is this guy? Is he a college student? Is he a working professional? It sounds like this class is for like people out of university and are now adults working for a living who essentially are such pathetic, weak-minded losers that they need to turn to classes, adult classes, to teach them how to think and feel and deal with reality. Are you kidding me? Where's your balls? Where's your brains? Where's your critical thinking skills? Where's your logic? Where's your reason? Where's your foundation of self? Don't you know how to think for yourself? Good Lord. Hicks enrolled in a Rethink Your Masculinity class offered by the Washington, D.C. What? Rape Crisis Center? Oh, you're going to be kidding me. These rape crisis centers are nothing more than places for women to go and report possible rapes, coulda raped, sometimes not. They're not for men. If a man gets raped, oh no, you can't come here. This is just a female rape crisis center. If you come in as a man and report you've been raped, we're going to laugh at you and tell you to get the hell out of here. Rape Crisis Center. I knew it. Where else would promote that all men are rapists and you need to check your masculinity? Collective action for safe spaces? What? You got to imagine that these rape crisis centers are just peopled with chicks that are recently out of university or old hippies. And Rethink, an organization that works to prevent sexual assault. Yeah, sexual assault. What does that mean exactly? I don't even know what that means anymore. The definition has become so broad it can mean anything. You look at a woman, you've assaulted me! I rape! Your eyes are raping me! Everything to a woman is a sexual assault these days. Catcalling. I heard about one story where some poor doctor lost a job because he tried to add one of his patients to his Facebook page. He sent her a Facebook invite. She complained that he was harassing her and he got fired. Everything is sexual assault these days. In the program, enrollees learn how... I was right! Didn't I say social construct? Learn how social constructs of masculinity harm them and the people around them. Notice I am talking like a robot because that is how these people think. They are nothing more than robots. They need to be programmed. When their life gets difficult, they can't think for themselves. So they must go to other people to help them and program them with a new narrative so that they can live their lives. Yeah, you losers! Losers! Hicks described the class as 8 weeks of guys discussing how they can dress their actions with better self-awareness and less toxicity. You mean make the world better for women while it gets suckier for you? The concept of toxic masculinity, bullshit, has become popular in postmodernism. Postmodernism is destroying the world. Oh my God. Academic circles over the past several years, advocates for programs like Rethink Masculinity. You mean a socialist, leftist dogma crap that is extra programs that, I mean, that not only, it's not enough that they essentially brainwash you in college. Now they're having programs outside of college to try and shame you and make you even less of a man than you already are. They ought to call this class Pussification 101. How to become more of a pussy. Rethink Masculinity. Argue that men have been taught to restrict their emotions. Oh, God. No. That is evolution, okay? The man would go out. He'd go out with a fucking spear, bow and arrows, a fucking stone axe, a flint knife and shit, and he would have to fucking wrestle with fucking saber-toothed tigers and kill goddamn elephants and fucking mammoths and woolly mammoths and shit with his bare fucking hands and just a spear and shit. Do you think he could get all fucking scared and girly and run off like a fucking woman? He had to control his emotions. Emotional control is part of what it means to be, it's part of what men are. It's part of our fucking evolution, you idiots. It's not a fucking social construct. It's biological, you idiots. We have innate tools within us that allow us to control our emotions and to focus them, which allow us to be more effective in whatever undertaking that we choose to, undertake. Women don't have that. This is just another attempt to turn men into women. Yes, men, try to fight your innate desires. Try to fight what you really are and become more like something you are not. But we're going to tell you your whole fucking life that this is actually what you are, and that society has just socially constructed you to believe something that's not true. It's really the truth. And what we're telling you is lies. But we've been taught that they're truth, so we're going to teach you that these things are truth, even though it's all bullshit. And the truth is, in reality, as your real self, you are a man with a lot of agency. Men have agency. Men have emotional control. Men have a spigot they can turn on and off. Men have the ability to control their emotions. Women do not. And that's a good thing, not a bad motherfucking thing. You turn a man into a mewling woman, you're much more able to control him if you can influence his emotions if he doesn't have control of them. Duh. A psychological decision, some argue, that results in violent outbursts and alcohol abuse in men. I'll tell you what's going to result in alcohol abuse and violent outbursts in men: marriage and subsequent divorce. Majority of divorces in the West are because of the majority of suicides in the West are because of divorce. Men get ass raped. How about that? Notice this is all just critical theory. There's no evidence for any of this. This is just conjecture on the part of the same idiots that said that video games promote violence and sexually explicit video games with sexual content essentially encourage rape and sexual assault. We know how much validity those accusations had, don't we? Zero. This is total nonsense, no evidence at all. If we are honest with ourselves, we have long known that masculinity kills men. This is just critical theory. For those of you that are not familiar with critical theory, it is a hallmark of the Frankfurt School. It's a very simple but very effective way. You just make statements as if they're facts, without supporting arguments. And if you don't give arguments and you just make critical statements, there's really nothing that you can pick apart and attack. No arguments, just statement of fact. You can create a counter-argument, of course, to the statement, but only to a certain extent, because you have to ask them to present some kind of evidence, some kind of argument to support their claim. But they won't do that. They'll just continue with saying the same thing in different ways, and you'll never get anywhere. It kills how? I would like to know, how does masculinity kill men? Somebody tell me, please. From my point of view, it saves men's lives. Okay? Stops them from becoming pussies, stops them from becoming white knight, pussified, blue-pilled wimps that essentially do everything that women want them to do. Get into bad marriages, acquiesce to every little friggin' thing, compromise to the umpteenth degree until they are shells of their former selves and their wives carry their balls around in a friggin' jar in their purse. Meanwhile, the man is out working himself to death for her while she's buying fancy shoes and expensive handbags until she divorces him and takes half his shit and he blows his head off with a 740, whatever the fuck, 357 Magnum, whatever the fuck he's got in his closet. Or maybe he hangs himself. Or maybe he jumps off a bridge. Yeah, New York City, that's a popular one. Jump off the bridge. It's such a long way down, it feels like hitting concrete when you hit the water. Yeah, that's a real horrible way to die. And if you don't die from hitting the water, you'll drown. Yeah, that's a real nice death, isn't it? That's a real good way to die. Oh, but masculinity is what kills men, not women, not femininity. Oh, no. You need to become less masculine so that we can blue pill you more and control you and make you into a puppet so we can create more debt slaves in ways both myriad and measurable. If you don't tell us the ways that it kills men, because that would be almost approaching an argument which would be easily refuted. Holloway wrote, while social constructions of femininity demand that women be thin, no, these are not social constructs. If they were just constructs, you could reteach men to like fat women, but you can't. You know why? Because it's biological in nature, you idiots. Accommodating and some unattainable balances of virginal and fuckable social constructions of masculinity demand that men constantly prove and reprove the very fact that they are, well, men. Proof to who? Proof to women! Women who are constantly demanding things of them and who are never happy. You see, it's not masculinity that's killing men. It's femininity. Goes on to say, the Rethink Masculinity class taught its enrollees that their personal issues are the consequence of their false notion of what it means to be a man. And what might that be? What it is essentially what a man really is. They want to take the reality of being a man, classify it as a social construct, then deconstruct it, essentially brainwash you, break apart everything that you believe and hold true, and then teach you this dogma ideological nonsense that is the real construct, and then infuse that into you to replace what is real with what is illusion. Oh, what you believe is really what a man is, but we're going to teach you what a man isn't is, so that we can control you, okay? And then once you believe that, then you're easily manipulated like a lump of clay, and then you'll do whatever we tell you to do, because we've infused your brain with a whole new narrative. We've infused your brain with a whole new set of beliefs about what it means to be a man, and all those beliefs mesh with the narrative we're going to teach you, and then we can use that narrative to manipulate you. Yeah. So it taught its enrollees their personal issues are the consequence of their false notion of what it means to be a man from the society instilled in them from an early age. I was trained and conditioned to be tough growing up. Yeah, because somebody's got to be tough. What the fuck are you talking about? What are you going to do when we get invaded by a foreign army? Are you going to get down on your hands and knees and beg them? Don't hurt me, please. I'm a pacifist. Don't hurt me. They're going to blow your fucking head off, you idiots. You have to be tough. Where's this notion coming that the world is some la-di-da place where fucking money is growing on trees and there's a fucking lollipop trees everywhere and candy canes are hanging off fucking trees everywhere and every house is made of fucking chocolate and gumdrops and shit and the world is just some beautiful, wonderful fucking place. Where's this coming from? Oh, that's right, but it's only not those things because of toxic masculinity. If we didn't have toxic masculinity, the world would be a beautiful, wonderful place because everybody would be like a woman, and we all know how wonderful women are. No, they're not violent or depraved at all. Women don't have any problems except for the horrible social constructs that taught them to be thin and attractive and demure to get a man. Oh no, that's the only problem that women have, those horrible social constructs that have been instilled in them since birth. If everybody would just throw aside these horrible social constructs, the world would be a better place, right? Yeah, this kind of nonsense can only flourish in a decadent world that has become too comfortable, things have become too easy, and it's all going to disappear the moment the shit hits the fan, the economy collapses, and people are eating dogs and cats because nothing's getting produced because we finally reached that so-called socialist utopia like they did in Venezuela where people are forming lines to get garbage. Yeah, you're not just forming food lines anymore because the supermarket is out of most stuff. So people form lines to get access to the dumpster. Yeah, and there's no more cats and dogs or even rats because people have learned to catch them, become very good in every sort of animal. Even rats have disappeared. Lovely dream of the socialist utopia. Yeah, where everyone is equal and everybody is a feminine wimp weakling. Oh, boy. It goes on to say, Eric Mankowski, Associate Chair of the Psychology Department of Portland State. Pussy, wimp, male feminist, university, and head of the school's Gender and Violence Intervention Research Team. They might as well call him the leftist propaganda chief propagandist of leftism at Portland State University. Ah, okay. Argues that men can benefit from programs like Rethink. No, they cannot benefit. They're men. Men are what they are. I would very much like this guy to explain to me, if masculine and feminine traits are not inbred, why is it that studies have been done time and time again on children as young as 3 years old, and there have been marked differences in the baby's behavior that correlate with adult behavior in men and women? How do you explain that, Eric Mankowski, that biological differences in how men and women behave have been shown from as young as 3 years old? Oh, how the hell? Are you telling me a 3-year-old learned some kind of social construct in the womb? Yeah, he was in the womb listening to his mother. And even though the baby's brain isn't well enough developed to understand language and doesn't understand the fucking language that's being spoken, somehow that baby got socialized to believe these things. Yeah, you're a fucking moron. The rethink masculinity helps men, helps them unlearn unhealthy attitudes. Like what? Tell me the unhealthy attitudes and I will tear your ass apart. Oh, you don't do that. Don't you love how these people just make these blanket statements? It will help you unlearn unhealthy attitudes. I'm not going to tell you what those attitudes are, but I'm just going to make this statement of fact, which of course is what you would expect to hear from a leftist. It's a promising approach, says Mankowski. Yeah, if you want to make a lot of he-she wimps who essentially are not going to be able to contribute much, if anything, to society. But we don't know whether they prevent sexual... Really? So you did... Well, wasn't that the point? I thought the whole point of this, it's being taught at a rape crisis center. I thought the whole point was to stop sexual violence. And you said you don't even know if it prevents it. Then what the hell are you doing it for? What are you doing it for? What's the point? What is the point? The whole point was supposed to be to stop sexual violence, right? Why else is it being taught at a rape crisis center, you pinhead? He's admitting they have no evidence. Well, we don't know, but it's better to do something than nothing, right? Wrong, you idiot. You have to have actual evidence that what you're doing is useful for the purpose that it is intended for before you do it, you idiot, or you're just wasting your fucking time. Some studies show promising effects on... What studies? You just said you don't know. Promising effects? What does that mean? That's not even evidence. What do you mean promising effects on attitudes, behavior, intentions? On attitudes and behavior intentions, just not on actions? What does that mean? That just means that people attending the course said, yeah, I get it, man. Groovy. Yeah, I'm more open-minded. I'm going to guess that 90% of the guys going to this is just looking to get laid. They're hoping to meet some vulnerable chicks or something and get laid, okay? This is just your typical white knight pussy boy program for men to go and virtue signal to women and possibly get some poon. But a single class is unlikely to undo years of socialization and toxic... What is this term? Toxic masculinity. Why don't you use toxic femininity, huh? Notice how the idea of toxic femininity is all directed inwards, while the idea of toxic masculinity is all about action directed outwards, meaning that somehow toxic masculinity isn't as big a problem... toxic femininity isn't as big a problem as toxic masculinity, because toxic masculinity just makes a woman hate herself. Toxic femininity, I mean, just makes a woman hate herself. But toxic masculinity, oh, that makes a man brutal and violent and evil and more likely to rape and kill and steal shit. Kind of interesting how the toxic masculinity is portrayed as much, much worse, but I thought men and women are equal. So wouldn't their problems be equal as well? Interesting. From those four distal expectations... Why don't you define those distal expectations, pal? No, come the proximal attitudes and behaviors, meaning you don't really know, so you're going to start to use what you think are some big fucking words to make yourself sound smarter than you really are and make it sound like you've got some fancy doodad science to represent this idea when you just said you have no evidence. Like I deserve to have access... From these four distal expectations come the proximal attitudes and behaviors like, I deserve to have access to women's bodies. Well, wait a second. He didn't name the four distal expectations that he is saying from which come this attitude. This guy's a moron. Maybe he said it, and Breitbart, or the original person that wrote this article, didn't just put those things down. Maybe that's it. They just didn't write it in the article. Yeah, we don't need to put as much contextual information as possible and actually provide context. We're just going to say shit is based on something, and we're not going to actually explain what that something is. Yeah, and this is what represents an intellectual in Western society. Oh my God, no wonder we're fucking doomed. What we don't know is if it's more effective to address the distal or proximal ideas and behaviors. Mankowski says this applies to alcohol abuse. It numbs feelings and allows men to act aggressive. Women, too. We can effectively address it. We're not addressing the underlying issue. It's functioning to help them display their manhood, so why would they stop there? So now he's just getting into this hazy, again, uncontextual talk. There's no context. There's no underlying explanations being given, just getting more and more vague. No cause and effect being mentioned. Just this guy's just muddying the waters at this point to try and hide the fact that you have no evidence. You have no motherfucking evidence for this toxic... Where's this toxic masculinity? Why don't you look around you with all that motherfucking skyscrapers? There's your toxic masculinity, motherfucker. No. The problem is individual choice. The problem is families being broken apart. The problem is single motherhood. The problem is that families don't have fathers anymore. The problem is that boys are being raised by mothers and they are being taught to be like women and they don't know how to control their emotions. So like women, they go out and act on their emotions, but they're like bigger and stronger than women and they actually have to suffer the consequences for their actions, unlike a woman. Unless, of course, they're a leftist scumbag, Antifa, a douchebag, anarchist that hates Trump. And then, of course, the left protects them and the media doesn't portray them as the bad guys they are. And they get a slap on the wrist, even when they're swinging around bike locks and hit people in the head. But if you're a conservative or have the wrong politics, well, then, yeah, you're going to suffer the consequences for your actions. But regardless... There's no evidence for this. There's just no evidence. I'm just going to say whatever I want. Toxic masculinity, toxic femininity, toxic Bigfootism. Meaning the problem of having a Bigfoot-like toxic emotional state. There's no proof that Bigfoot exists, but I'm just going to invent shit and make it up, and then it's real because I've invented it. This is just the left invent. This is made up shit. There's no evidence for any of this. This shit really pisses me off. Masculinity is not toxic or evil. Like anything, it's all dependent on how people act. Just like the idea that guns are evil. There is no such thing as evil guns. There is no such thing as evil masculinity. It's all about personal responsibility, and I'm getting tired of this identity politics where the left groups everybody together so that they can demonize them all at once and marginalize whole groups that they want to disenfranchise so that they can gain more power. Pisses me off. Let me know what you think of this article, guys, in the comments section, and check out my description to see my Patreon, which I hope you will choose to donate to. I am the Mgtow philosopher, and I wish you well. Take care.